Ladies and gentlemen, it seems like there is not a single place on planet Earth that has not been infiltrated with gender ideology. If you thought it was ridiculous that Algerian boxer Iman Khalif was allowed to compete against women, wait until you see what else is happening in other African countries. Hello everyone, if you're a new viewer, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. If this is your second, third, fourth time watching one of my videos and you are not yet subscribed, we already go together. Okay, make it official and hit that subscribe button. Today we have to once again talk about male athletes infiltrating women's sports. The disrespect is getting disrespectful, but I also want to share with you my own personal thoughts. After doing some research, I have developed my own conspiracy theory about this, and so I'm going to share those thoughts with you towards the end of the video, but first, I want to get into these stories. So the first story takes place in Congo, where there is a football club called TP Mazembe, which is a men's team that has been around since 1939, but in 2020, they finally created a women's division to give women the opportunity to compete professionally. And the women's team is also called TP Mazembe or TP Mazembe Féminin, which is French for women's. Now, let me introduce you to the women's team captain, Belange Nzumba. Belange plays the defender position. Let me introduce you to the highest scoring player on the team for the 2024 season, Merveille Kajinga.
That's weird.
This is one of the second highest scoring players on the team, Lacho Marta. It's fucking ridiculous. This team has been infiltrated by men. Not even men pretending to be women. If they were at least pretending, it would be like 2% less offensive, but they're not even trying. Look at this official poster for the team. How is this real life? This poster, which is meant to be for an all-women's team, predominantly features men who shouldn't even be there. And all of the advertising refers to them using female pronouns. So it's just even more insult to injury. And look, I even tried to play devil's advocate with myself. I'm like, you know what? Maybe Lacho is a woman. Me and my dumb ass is like, don't believe your lying eyes. Okay? That could be a woman. That could be a woman. I'm like, let me just give the benefit of the doubt. And I decided to look for some videos of Lacho, you know, to justify to myself that this is a woman. And I found one. This is from a press conference after one of their games. Now, you can only hear Lacho speak briefly because a female commentator is dubbed over him speaking, which I believe was done intentionally to obscure his voice, because I watched videos from one of the other players who spoke at this exact same press conference and the coach who also spoke at this exact same press conference, and none of their voices were dubbed over. And from what I can tell, they're all speaking the same language. So I can only draw the conclusion that they dubbed over Lacho's voice because they are trying to obscure his obviously male voice. So we can only hear him speak for a few seconds, but nonetheless, here's the clip.
Uma felicidade, momento do jogo e estou grato.
Does that look or sound like a woman to you?
She look like a man.
And then there's Belange, who walks around with a goatee because he doesn't give a shit. Okay, he doesn't even try to pass as a bearded lady. He's just a man. And then there's Merveille. I try to convince myself that this is a woman because you know what? Some women are just masculine and there's nothing wrong with that. But the more videos I saw just confirmed to me that this is a man. Now, what do you think happens when you allow 3 men to compete on a women's team? A, they go on to win the championship because they have an advantage. B, they go on to win the championship because they have an advantage. C, they go on to win the championship because they have an advantage. Or D, they go on to win the championship because they have an advantage. Yes, you're right. You're so smart. That was the right answer. That one right there, the one that you picked, was the right answer. So yes, this women's team with 3 men on it went on to win the women's championship. Now, they of course get this big, beautiful trophy, and they also won $600,000 for the whole team. After the win, they all met up to celebrate, and I found this video where the chairman is so excited, so happy that his team, that is only 4 years old, has been such a dominant force in women's sports. He's smiling, he's enthusiastic, he's proud, and when the camera pans over to his team, they all look pissed. Maybe they're upset because they aren't getting the payout they expected from the $600,000 and now they feel exploited. Maybe they aren't enthusiastic because they know they cheated and they've taken away that prize money from other women, other African women who've trained hard and worked hard. Maybe they're mad about something else. Who knows? But undeniably, they're not in a very celebratory mood. And really and truly, none of them should be, okay? All these coaches and the people who run the team should be ashamed of themselves for this farce. And the men shouldn't feel proud of themselves either. They found a loophole that shouldn't have been there that allowed them to compete on a women's team, but that doesn't make them smart for finding the loophole. That makes them cowards because they're such mediocre male players that they have to play against women to win awards. And that's not a disrespect to women, but we all know the reality of women's sports versus men's sports. There's a reason men don't complain when they have to play against women. A prime example is what recently happened in Spain. An all-transgender team was formed. The team was entirely composed of trans men. So these are females who have taken testosterone and potentially had surgeries so that they can live their lives passing as men. And they fought really hard to get their own team because, you know, inclusivity and all that. They say that they have the right to play soccer on equal terms with men because in their eyes, they are men.
I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man.
So this trans team, which is really just a female team, was finally allowed to compete against men this year. And on September 21st, 2024, they played their first game against a team of men. And they lost 19-0.
Talo. Sorry.
When they lost, it was actually quite funny, but also interesting to see how the media reported it because more conservative-leaning platforms pointed out the obvious, that males have an advantage over females that not even identity can overcome, whereas left-leaning publications treated it as a triumph because, well, at least there was representation. I always enjoy seeing how different sides of the political spectrum report on the same story, and one way that I do that is by using the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. Ground News is the world's first news comparison platform. They're an app and website that brings together related stories in one place to highlight important perspectives often overlooked by mainstream media. They also provide context on each source's political bias and ownership to help readers see how these factors influence the framing of a story or whether it gets reported at all. While exploring Ground News with my Vantage subscription, I came across this story. Manchester United scrapped plans to wear pride-themed jackets after player refused. This story was reported by 60 different sources, 58% right-leaning, 16% centrist, and 26% left-leaning. So we can see this story is being underreported by the left, and when we look at the headlines, we see differences in how the story is being reported. For example, Miaz.com, which is a left-leaning source, wrote this headline: Manchester United ditches its entire pride effort after one lone player throws a hissy fit over rainbows. Whereas the National Pulse, which is right-leaning, wrote this headline: Soccer team ditches LGBT jackets after Muslim player refuses to wear his. The left-leaning source characterized the event as a hissy fit, implying that the soccer player was being childish, while the right-leaning source mentions that the player is Muslim, which is integral to his motivations. Another unique feature Ground News has that I love is the blind spot feature. A blind spot is a news story that has political undertones and is disproportionately covered by media sources on one side of the political spectrum. For example, this story is being underreported by the right. Residents of Alberta Town vote in favor of bylaw banning rainbow flags crosswalks. 60% are left-leaning, 20% are centrist, and 20% are right-leaning. Or this story that is being underreported by the left. ACLU lawyer tells Jake Tapper 2-year-olds know they're transgender while arguing for transitioning children. 86% of the sources are right-leaning while only 14% are left-leaning. I wonder why. I really enjoy using Ground News. Everything is presented in such an organized and straightforward way with multiple sources so that you can easily draw your own conclusions. And in a world where everyone has a political agenda, it is refreshing to have a platform that is completely neutral. Just in time for the holidays, Ground News is offering my viewers 50% off a Vantage subscription, which is the same plan that I use to have access to all of their amazing features. It's their biggest discount of the year, and you can redeem it for yourself or as a gift. To take advantage of this massive discount, go to ground.news/NCS, scan the QR code, or click the link in the description box down below to subscribe for less than $5 a month. Subscribing not only supports my work, you're also supporting an independent platform working to make the media landscape more transparent. A special thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. My next story is about another African soccer player named Barbara Banda. Now, the BBC chose violence this year. They pissed everyone off, including J.K. Rowling, who in my opinion is the real Queen of England. Okay, it's my opinion, don't at me. They pissed off everyone, including J.K. Rowling, by giving Barbara Banda an award for Women's Footballer of the Year for 2024.
Hello, Barbara. Sorry to interrupt your team meeting, everyone, but Barbara, we just wanted to deliver a special award for you. You are the BBC Women's Footballer of the Year 2024!
Now, you know J.K. Rowling had something to say about this. She tweeted, presumably the BBC decided this was more time efficient than going door to door to spit directly in women's faces. I agree with her. This was a figurative spit in the faces of all women. Now, of course, there's people on the left who said, oh, look at this cis white woman saying that this brave black woman isn't feminine enough. Oh, the bigotry. Yeah, yes, of course. They played the race card.
Don't play the race card with me, Fruit Loop.
This is not about whether Banda is feminine. This is about whether Banda is even female. In 2022, the Women's Africa Cup of Nations withdrew Banda over gender eligibility concerns, and the BBC knew this when they decided to give the award to Banda.
I mean, the BBC continues to find ways to annoy people, doesn't it? And, you know, they could have given this award to almost any female footballer, but they decided to give it to this particular female footballer who's controversially been banned from playing football as a woman because she's got too much testosterone in her system.
There aren't any women with too much testosterone unless they're doping, and that's not the accusation here.
Right.
What seems to be the case, maybe the case, is that there are males with a disorder of sex development who are registered female when they're born, right, because that's what they look like. And then later in life, they go through full puberty, they have internal testes, they have full male advantage in sport, and that's clearly very unfair.
Right.
That was the
so
case
is that the case with Barbara Banda then?
We don't know. What we know is that there are at least 3 footballers in the national team that Banda plays in Zambia, which has been accused of having this issue in their team. And there are at least 3 players in that team who've had issues. And Banda was apparently withdrawn from the African Cup of Nations for women a couple of years ago because there were going to be sex tests. You know, if you're playing in women's football, the onus is on you to prove that you're eligible. And if you won't take a test, we can read what we like into that. You know, it's really a shame to see a woman's career taken by someone who isn't entitled to it, because chances are that they're average males rather than exceptional females.
I think they're doing this on purpose. The Olympics, the BBC, and all these other organizations and publications who are giving men awards that are meant for women are doing this intentionally. The Olympics intentionally let Iman Khalif compete in the women's boxing and win a gold medal despite failing gender tests. The Olympics let Lin Yuting compete in women's boxing and win a gold medal despite failing gender testing. The Olympics let Caster Semenya compete in more than one Olympics and win gold many times in women's track and field events despite failing gender testing. The BBC gave Barbara Banda an award meant for women despite failing gender testing. Now here's where my conspiracy theory comes in. Now before I explain it to you, I gotta cook a little bit, okay? I gotta put in the ingredients, gotta stir it up, I gotta let it simmer on the stove. I gotta put everything together for you so you can understand where I'm coming from, okay? All of the athletes I just named are not trans athletes. They are athletes with development of sex disorders, or DSDs for short. And there has been an increase in not only men who are identifying as trans, but also men with DSDs who have been incorrectly labeled female on their legal documents. Now, for those of you who don't understand DSDs, let me explain. There are over 60 different types of DSDs, but the most commonly occurring one is androgen insensitivity syndrome. So, for simplicity's sake, that's the only one that I'm going to talk about in this video. Also, it's the one that I believe all of those athletes have. Androgen insensitivity syndrome is a genetic condition that exclusively affects males, and it impacts how the body responds to male hormones during puberty, but also during gestation in the mother's womb. When we are all just little fetuses in our mother's wombs during early development, all of our fetal genitalia are the same. We are all phenotypically female. And at around week 7 in utero, the sex-related gene on the Y chromosome initiates the development of testes in male infants. The testicles produce testosterone. Testosterone triggers the development of the male internal and external reproductive organs during the fetal development. And that is how male babies become masculinized in the womb. Now, males with androgen insensitivity syndrome have had that process interrupted while they were in utero and subsequently interrupted while going through male puberty once they're out the womb and they're older. And androgen insensitivity syndrome exists on a spectrum. I hate using that word because it's been co-opted, but in this particular instance, it's the most practical phrase. It exists on a spectrum. Now, males with complete androgen insensitivity have bodies that are entirely unresponsive to male hormones, resulting in external genitalia that looks either ambiguous or looks female, despite the presence of internal testes. These males do not masculinize at all, so they do not develop facial hair or thick body hair. They do not develop a masculinized voice. They are unable to get pregnant, and they are unable to impregnate women. They are completely feminized. Like, when you see them, they look like women. They sound like women. And to give you an example, here is a video of a person who up until age 14 had no idea that they were actually a male.
I went to the pediatrician with my mom for just checkup, and then they discovered that my hormone levels were really high. I needed to do an ultrasound to look at my female reproductive organs, and the doctor told me when he was doing the ultrasound that he couldn't see anything. So that was like a really big shock to me, and I immediately started crying and had an awful day that I will always remember.
So as you can see, despite being genetically male, because their body is completely unresponsive to testosterone, they have been completely feminized. So that is an example of complete androgen insensitivity. Now, partial androgen insensitivity occurs when a male's body has partial responsiveness to male hormones, leading to a varying degree of masculinization, ranging from ambiguous genitalia to predominantly male features with some feminization. There is a broad range of how people with partial androgen insensitivity could physically present, and this is what I believe Iman Khalif, Barbara Banda, Lin Yuteng, and even Brittany Griner have. Yes, I believe Brittany Griner is actually a male with a DSD.
You're about to be a mom. How is that feeling? Pops. Oh, let me get it together. About to be a pops.
And the last type of androgen insensitivity syndrome is mild. Now, these are males who are mostly unaffected, although they do typically have issues with sperm production. So that, in a nutshell, is the spectrum of androgen insensitivity syndrome. But what causes it? You're probably thinking that all these people were just unlucky in the genetic lottery, that some freak accident happened during their development in the womb, and there is no rhyme or reason to it. Well, that's not true. Dr.Shanna Swann is an epidemiologist who studied the decline in men's sperm count, and she discovered that phthalates, which are chemicals used in plastics, and pesticides have an impact not only on men's sperm count, but their sexual development in the womb, and are directly linked to the feminization of men. These chemicals are called endocrine disruptors. They are chemicals that interfere with the body's hormones and have an adverse effect on humans and animals.
I went to Japan, which had a 5-year big research effort on endocrine disrupting chemicals. And I was sitting next to a chemist who was a friend, and he said, Shanna, you should look at phthalates. First of all, we know through our, studies at the CDC how to measure them, and we've shown that they're in everybody. And then he told me this story, which changed my life. He said that his colleagues at EPA and at the National Toxicology Program had been feeding phthalates to pregnant mice. And what they found was that the male offspring developed in a way that was not completely masculinized. When the mother, let's say rat, was exposed to a phthalate in early pregnancy, then her male offspring developed smaller penises, smaller scrotum, testes were less likely to descend, and there were internal changes as well, changes to the vas deferens. The distance from the anus to the genitals became shorter. I thought about this and I thought, well, what about us? We found the phthalate syndrome in humans. This means that the mothers with the higher levels of the anti-androgenic phthalates, particularly those 3 that I told you, were more likely to have a child with these symptoms. What they showed in these animal studies is that when the mother was given phthalates in her food at that time, when the testosterone is surging, that the surge is wiped out. It's eliminated. The graph is very dramatic.
Right.
It's just completely flat in males, genetic males. So that says that that male needs that testosterone at that time to develop normally. The default, if he doesn't get it, that genital tract will remain the default, which is female.
And during that same podcast, he also asked Dr. Swann if she thought there was a correlation between transgender people and phthalates. And she said it hasn't been significantly studied, so she couldn't give a definitive answer, but she did mention this.
They can certainly already find out who that rat wants to have sex with. And they can produce rats, and as I told you, that males want to have sex with other males.
Really?
Yes. That can be produced with the pesticide we talked about before, atrazine.
Right. And this was a study that was done on fish and frogs as well, right?
Right. Frogs, particularly, yeah.
Frogs.
Right.
Oh, yes. They made homosexual frogs.
Right.
Right.
Right. So that is possible.
All this time I thought Alex Jones was just making shit up.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
Turning the frogs gay.
Anyways, it has been estimated that between 1 in 20,000 and 1 in 50,000 males have androgen insensitivity, which in my opinion is a pretty high number for something that's supposed to be rare and is demonstrably being caused by pesticides and phthalates. And phthalates are everywhere. They're in nail polish, perfume, deodorant, hair gel, shampoos, soaps, body lotions, vinyl, food packaging materials, adhesives, bottles, the list goes on. It is in everything. And nothing is being done to protect us. Now, the Consumer Product Improvement Act of 2008 is targeted at protecting products for children and infants. And while something is better than nothing, that act fails to protect pregnant mothers, the baby in the womb, and literally everyone else. So here is my conspiracy theory. Many corporations and governments are duplicitous. They don't like to fix problems that they have created if those problems are really profitable and if they can just convince us that it's not really a problem. Like obesity, for example. Obesity is a problem, but what do they try to do? They try to convince you that it's okay to be obese. They have body positivity. There is a huge push to get us to accept obesity. You have runway models that are obese, Sports Illustrated models that are obese, not even just fat, obese. It has the word morbid in it because it's not healthy, but they're trying to convince us that it's okay. Now, in terms of the gender debate, what has been happening? There seems to be this psyop to normalize feminized men. We see Harry Styles in skirts and dresses, Drake painting his nails and wearing these stupid ass rainbow clips in his hair, Dylan Mulvaney getting a sponsorship from Bud Light, a brand that is meant for masculine men drinking beer. The messaging that they have been pushing over the last couple years is that it is normal for men to be feminine. They are gaslighting us and telling us that these men with DSDs are actually women and we must accept them as such. They are trying to normalize language like assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth, cis this, cis that. They are trying to convince us that gender exists on a spectrum. I hate that word, I know I used it earlier, but whatever. They even have Neil deGrasse Tyson spewing this garbage.
The XXXY chromosomes are insufficient. Suppose no matter my chromosomes, today I feel 80% female, 20% male. I'm gonna put on makeup. I'm gonna do that. Tomorrow I might feel 80% male. I'll remove the makeup and I'll wear a muscle shirt.
Many people have floated the conspiracy theory that this is about population control, that if everyone is gay or trans, then fertility rates will drop, and as a result, Bill Gates will get his wish of a reduced population globally. And maybe, but what if all of this is a big psyop that was designed to get us to accept a gender spectrum and feminized men, because if we see it as a normal societal progression, then maybe we won't notice or care that chemicals are causing it. We'll just think it's happening naturally and it's just a social thing. They have brainwashed so many people on the left who will argue till they are blue in the face that Iman Khalif is a woman, rather than stopping to think, hey, why are there so many so-called women, especially women athletes, who are failing gender tests? And all of these big corporations who are pumping out these products that are full of phthalates also fund these activist groups who will silence dissent against the gender narrative. As long as we're all arguing amongst ourselves about who's allowed to be in women's bathrooms, who isn't, who's a woman, who isn't, we will all be too distracted to hold these corporations accountable for poisoning us and artificially causing the feminization of men. And just so you're aware, this whole feminization of males is not exclusive to humans. This is also a problem in animal species. I believe the transgender movement is being pushed so aggressively to muddy the waters between trans and intersex. If you have to accept one, then you have to accept the other, and if you don't accept it, you are labeled as some kind of phobic or some kind of bigot, when in actuality, we all have a legitimate reason to be concerned for why this is happening. You can't argue forever that this is natural social progression. You know, gender norms are changing. It's not the 1950s anymore. No, this is being caused by chemicals. And at some point in the future, they're going to have to acknowledge it. But for right now, they're trying to gaslight us and tell us that this is normal, that this is all normal. We should accept it and be loving and inclusive. No, bitch, you're poisoning the population. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. What do you guys think? Is there merit in my theory? Am I missing something? Is there something that you guys thought of while you were watching this video? Something important that I should know? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'm really curious to hear what you guys think. If you like this video, please don't forget to hit the like button, because when you do, it helps other people find my videos in the algorithm. If you are not yet subscribed, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you would like to support my channel monetarily, you can do so by clicking on my sponsor of today's video, Ground News, or you can do so by supporting me on Patreon. A special thanks to those of you who are currently supporting me on Patreon, and a special thanks to all of you who watched till the very end. If you like this video and you would like to see more like it, I will have 2 more videos for you in the end cards. I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye.